squandering of natural resources and wealth, and just general tyranny. And because of all these things, the common people suffer. Now a dead child was brought to Baibars one day bearing 2 heads, 4 eyes, 4 arms, and 4 legs. He did not know what to do about the situation. This again is a further example of birth defects that started to occur among the Muslims. In the 1990s, you will be interested to know that to this day, Muslims are the only people to have successfully, with their doctors, been able to separate cephalic twins, and they've lived. Cephalic twins are usually twins where they're born with their bodies conjoined, the heads conjoined. One is parasitic and lives off the other. They're separate, 2 separate creatures, but for some reason they are fused together. The Muslims are the only ones to this date that have been able to separate cephalic twins, and they live. The Americans haven't been able to do it. The English people haven't been able to do it. The Germans haven't been able to do it. The French haven't been able to do it. All these people who would class themselves as, or would have us believe they were the master race, have been unable to do something that for all intents and purposes, as per the greatness that they espouse for their civilization, all intents and purposes, they've not been able to do it. And the Muslims who right now are in some of our most difficult trials and tribulations are doing these. We are leading the world in cephalic and parasitic twin separation right now. Muslims are leading the world in vitro and artificial insemination technology. The Gulf is giving the Americans an absolute shellacking in terms of this type of study. They're giving them an actual beating because of the fact that the fiqh and the knowledge that people have out there has pushed them and spurred them to creativity. So this was used by some of these ulama as a case study. So the fact that the ulama would say the fact that Baibars didn't know what to do means that he wanted to do something, but didn't know what to do because he never ran across a situation. So the ulama used this as a basis to say, we've got to do something about these conjoined or cephalic or parasitic twins. We've got to try to do something, either by separating them or doing other things. And just by separating the nerves of these small children, dividing up the different cables that make up the veins and the arteries and everything else is hours long. One of the cephalic twins in Egypt, it was a 27-hour operation, just the separation. Never mind closing up the wounds. It's 27 hours to separate them. 4 doctors. 4. And that's fiqh. Because they were combining the salahs the whole time. They had to. It's a 27-hour operation. And only fiqh gives you that type of wisdom, that type of knowledge. Only fiqh gives you that attention to detail, where you're able to prioritize things and to perfect matters and to get to the bottom of things. And so because of that, that cephalic twin that had been separated, the first one died a few months after the operation. The second one lived till 5 years of age and died of a brain infection. But the Americans are 0-0. They've never been able to separate one and have it survive. They are 0-0, bottom line. How many incubator births do Americans and English people have to survive? Few. This is something that our people have been dealing with for all these years. We have no reason to look down on ourselves, not technologically, because we're taking lemons and making lemonade. We have the least resources in terms of having them readily available, and we're pulling off the most amazing feats. 663AH. Al-Funush and Ibn al-Ahmar in Andalus had just engaged in another huge war that would decide the future of the entire peninsula and would later become Spain. Ibn al-Ahmar was victorious, but only after the loss of 40,000 Muslim lives. The Tatars continued to absorb sections of area around Sham and outlying provinces. So all this is going on where you have a sweep of Franj coming down and trying to establish a foothold there, and then coming down in a pincing movement and trying to keep a foothold in Sham. So Sham is there in the east, in the west is Andalus, and the Tatars are coming down from the north, sweeping down. So you have two external enemies. And people say that Hitler's mistake was fighting a two-front war. We will show you, inshallah, as history goes on, that Muslims have fought 2- and 4-front wars and won for years, because Muslims are an inventive people. Now we look at the years from 664 to 676. Hulugu Khan, head of the Tatar and Mughal armies, he died in 665 AH. He left behind 17 sons. His successor was Abgha. He read numerous books but kept his shamanistic beliefs. The Great Khan, as he was called, was the son of Genghis Khan. Baibars swept in and took Jaffa in the year 666 AH and began to consolidate his own governorate. He would find himself later falling out with Imam Nawawi, who on account of him and his policies refused to eat the oranges of Damascus. The Imam believed that the method of the conquest of Baibars had been unjust, and so the food from the trees would count as stolen and thus not valid to eat. So Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, Imam Yahya Nawawi, the one who wrote the 40 hadith, had personal issues with Baibars regarding the policies that he implemented, and because of this, Imam Nawawi's fatwa on the oranges of Damascus was don't eat them, and I don't eat them. And that's principled because Damascus at that time was known for its oranges. They were quite large, they were luscious, and he said, don't eat them, I don't eat them. And they said, well, then what shall we do? And he said, to eat any other fruit, but do not eat these. Because Baibars was sometimes called Al-Malik al-Zahir, the victorious and manifest king, in which what Imam Nawawi would do is he would alter the ra to become a lamb, so it read Al-Malik al-Zalim, the oppressing king. And he would know that it was Imam Nawawi doing that. When it would be altered in a letter or in any correspondence, he would arc the ra slightly so it looked like a lamb, Al-Malik al-Zalim, the oppressing king. And it started a little trend to where other ulama would start doing it as well. And so then it became difficult to trace exactly who was responsible for this. But the trendsetter was Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah. And he was responsible for this. And they began to have a lot of fallings out over this issue. At the year 667 AH, 200 boats, some accounts say more, were destroyed by strong gale force winds, and many people died. In the year 668 AH, Baibars stormed the last of the Ismaili Hashishiyun castles and took their leader Najmuddin Hassan ibn al-Sha'rani as a criminal. Took him as a prisoner. Now, as a recap very quickly over the Ismaili Hashishiyun, these were the people that tried to assassinate Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. They tried to assassinate Imam Muwafiquddin ibn Qudama. They tried to assassinate other people. They tried to kill the famous European explorer Marco Polo, who was on the way bringing noodles from China, which was still ethnic food to English people. They'd never seen noodles or macaroni or spaghetti and these other things. He was bringing them back from China and was nearly killed. But he was given safe passage. After surviving the assassination attempt, he was given safety. I'll mention Hassan al-Sabah very quickly. Again, he was the founder of the Hashishiyun. He gave them hashish to smoke in a large dose, and they would pass out, any follower that wanted to join their group. He would then have the body transported to his mounted fortress near a gardened area, in which there would be women and lovely meadows and rivers and lakes, and he would allow them to do whatever they wanted to do for a week. And then after that time, someone would come and drug that person again with hashish or what have you and take them out, and they would be carried down from the layer back to Hassan al-Sabah, who would say, you had been transported by my command to Al-Jannah, the paradise. If you want to go back there, you must do everything I tell you to do. And so you find people who were fervently dedicated, murderous, who would do anything as long as Hassan al-Sabah said, I will one day let you go back. Because they wanted anything to be able to experience what they felt were the delights of the paradise. Baibars brought this cult, who had allied itself with the Crusaders, because they knew their fortunes were few, they were small people. So he brought this cult to an end by storming the last of their castles. I also want to mention something very briefly as well. One of the reasons why the Mongols were able to, or the Tatars were able to sneak up and sack Baghdad with such swiftness, with very little response, is because one of the Shia theologians in Baghdad went out to meet them and told them of the fortifications that they would encounter and what type of resistance that the Sunnis would offer. It's for this reason you have to understand the problem between Sunni and Shia, or the Sunnis and the cults, is not just a problem of you say potato and I say potato. It's a fundamental theological problem. If you will allow a people to come and annihilate an entire judiciary, irrespective of what you think of them, then you have more than just a mere problem of raising hands and not raising hands. You have an issue that is theological, because you do not believe the people that you're dealing with deserve any treatment of as human beings whatsoever. The Tatars in this time destroyed and finished devastating the areas around and including Harran in the year 670 AH. Harran was a very important center of Muslim knowledge, because more than 50 great ulama down the ages came from Harran. You'll usually know this where the alim at the end of his name will have Al-Harrani, the one from Harran, right? You have Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah Al-Harrani, Ibn Hamdan Al-Harrani, right? All these different people are coming from Harran. The town was left in ruins, with few left to defend it. After numerous battles with the Tatars, and battles that left his body scarred with different wounds, Baibars al-Malik al-Zahir breathed his last in 676 AH. In the aftermath of his death, there was a huge amount of disorder, because Baibars had charisma, he had charm, he had the ability to gather people around himself, to reconcile people. And so when he died, you very rarely meet a leader who has power, charisma, and the ability to unite people. You very rarely find that all in one person. You'll sometimes find charisma, but he doesn't have any power to do anything about it. Or you find power and charisma, but he doesn't unite people, and he's divisive. Or you find power and he unites people, but he's a beast, and he murders and he slaughters and he does all these things. So to find those three attributes in one person that's a leader is very rare. And Baibars was one of those examples. Some people circulated the rumor that he'd been poisoned, but that has not been borne out by any serious historical examination. There have only been one or two sources that have alleged that, and they're much later in the biographical accounts. This was the same Baibars who fought a two-front war, one against the Tatars, as we've already discussed, but also he fought and stopped the Seventh Crusade from one of the kings of the French, Louis IX. And he showed that the Christians had lost their resolve. And by breaking the Crusader force with the repeat action rifles that had been invented years before, with the armies that he had, with the strength that he had, he began to get closer and closer to taking down the Crusader castles, because there were still a few that were dotting the landscape.